Conversation now, and we're looking at the bonds market and wondering how much of this is being utilized as it should be. We're going to also be looking at Nigeria's 2024 bond, which was recently listed on the JP Morgan's index, emerging market government bond index, as well as the other bonds that have been listed on that market as well. It is a part of the market that sometimes seems as if it's not utilized as much as it should be. But now the listing of this 2024 bond, what is the implication for Nigerian economy? Well, an economist, Dr. Boniface Chizia, is going to be having this conversation with me for the next couple of minutes, and that's going to be our focus, the bonds market. Dr. Boniface, good morning. Dr. Chizia, good morning. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you very much.
Let's look at this. Why do you think this 2024 bond was actually added to the list? Already there were three bonds there, the 2014, 2019, and the 2022 bond, and now this one.
Well, I think if you read the notification on this, you find that the earlier bonds that were added were those for domestic currency. And so this one, I think this is now trying to target international borrowing. So essentially, I think that's the difference. And essentially, what this says, about us is the fact that it seems as if we are now being very prominent, in the bond market. Prominent in the sense that with activities in the bond market, it's quite extensive.
That's on the international level.
International level, even in domestic level. If you look at the data, which I've been able to gather, as I was trying to prepare for this discussion, you find that even in domestic market, you find that 16 states over the past 6 years have raised 250 billion naira from the bond market, with Lagos State, leading the pack. Lagos State has raised 187, and the least it's Kogi State that's raised 5 billion naira. And so there are issues in the sense that if the government is going into the markets and raising all these bonds, then that's some crowding out effect in terms of companies, conglomerates and manufacturing companies in the real sector, and we want to also go to the market and raise money, long-term funding. So you have issues. There are also issues of utilization of this money, and often, the fear is that this money is being raised and they're not being properly utilized. So that's an issue really with our overall debt situation. And then, of course, okay.
Then let's focus on this 2024 bond,
yes.
And then we can talk about the other ones that the states have raised, as well as conglomerates and other companies. This 2024 bond has put us prominently on the international spotlight, at least in terms of how the bond market is supposed to be. But what does it mean for Nigeria's economy? Let's talk about this in pounds and dollars, naira and kobo.
Yeah, okay. I think what it means is that we've been very active. We've been participative in the market. We've been raising money. We've raised $30 billion have been raised by Nigerian companies. Nigerian government itself has raised 30.something billion. 9 outings in the Eurobond market, and so we're very active. So it means that really this is an economy that's very. So to that extent, it means that now, if we don't know, we're not privy, to what informs, JP Morgan, what they must have the criteria. One of the criteria would be that you have to be dominant and prominent. Now, besides the fact that we are dominant in the Nigerian, the African economy has been the leading economy based on the based GDP. Let's also factor in the fact that we are 26th economy in the world, also as per the base GDP. So once you are listed, then it puts you on the spotlight. So it puts you on the spotlight. But there are so other advantages in the sense that you will not get listed if you've not come up to a certain level, you've not met certain criteria. I mean, we can draw a line from what obtains locally. If you want to go and list your shares in the market in their conditions, must have been in operations for about 5 years and so on and so forth. You must at least allow about 25% of what you're going to list to go to the public and so on. They must not have less than 500 people participating in your company, and things about your accounts, and so on. So if we have locally, we can also extend it. And so I'm sure there are certain criteria that we use. And once they do that, then it means that their direct benefits will be to the fact that you will be able to go to the market, and then liquidity around your issue might be to some extent guaranteed. So that's an element of guarantee to say, look, for this bond to qualify to be listed, then it's a standing tall until we list it. And then, of course, so it means that you should have some benefits in terms of the coupon rate. And so, because, so what it does is it speaks to the fact that the risk factor, in trying to, to patronize your bond, it's mitigated.
So why is it that if it seems to be such a very viable option to pick in terms of raising easy money, why is it that we do not have as many companies or even states taking this option on the domestic front?
I think the fact, the worry is that states are overdoing it. I just sent, as we were coming in, I said to you that incidentally, editorial on today's Guardian talks about it's about Nigerians' debt burden, today's Guardian. And if you look at excess from it, it says the private sector has responded with great enthusiasm. Since 2019, 23 Nigerian companies have issued bonds to raise 223 billion naira domestically. And a new MO statement last week indicated that Nigerian firms had so far raised over $30 billion for the international market to expand their operations. And so the concern of these editorials are really like overreaching ourselves. So the Nigerian banks are going out and then they are issuing bonds, and the bonds are being oversubscribed. Quite recently, the banks, Central Bank came and then addressed certain issues about capital, the capital requirements and so on for banks, capital adequacy, for banks. And most of the banks, if you follow closely, have all gone to the international market to raise money. I think if I follow closely, the latest is EcoBank.
And Access Bank too.
Access Bank has gone, Country Trust Bank has gone, the First Bank has gone, and so on and so forth. So Nigerian banks are quite active. And then if you go to the market, if your bond is in the market, one of the things it does is that other people who come to the market will have to benchmark. And that benchmarking is not just for other international countries. It also, domestic countries, also companies that go to the market, it also help them to benchmark. So if you're getting this sort of rates, by being charged, this coupon rate is what would make a issue, to be acceptable. How does that relate to, so the benchmark against Nigerian. So there are attractions, but also there are downsides. Downsides in the sense that you are being spotlighted. So the extent that you're being spotlighted, what that does to you is that now you are in the public glare, much more than what should have been the case. And so once there are issues, that things begin to happen to you on the negative side, also that's going to be highlighted. So
should one of the downsides be a positive, or should one of the advantage be a positive reflection on the naira, or a downside to be a negative reflection on the naira?
I would expect that it possibly should impound on naira. Naira has been stable for quite some time now. I think this governor has been doing very well. Things seem to be working for him very well. If you look at if you go to the unofficial market, foreign market, to borrow some money now, you find that the thing has been stable. I went there to send some money the last time. I was surprised. I was spending something higher than what I got. So what is happening is that banks are issuing these bonds, and they're getting money. They're getting hard currency. And so what does in effect is that you're now raising this money, and you're going to utilize it for your customers. And so instead of putting pressure, what that does automatically is that it reduces the pressure, domestic pressure, on the available naira. And so if you look at the whole scenario the way it is today, if you look at our reserves, that's accretion to reserve, it's been great. I'm sure you've seen that. And if you go to the market, there's stability in the market. So we don't know. The government has a magic wand. I hope he keeps it, he sustains it.
Well, in looking at the domestic bond market now, has it seen as much participation from investors as much as we're seeing on the international bond scale?
I just said 16 states over the past 6 years.
That's states.
Yes.
So let's talk about...
You're talking about the government, Nigerian government.
Public and private sector.
Okay, when you talk about public sector, one of the issues you have is that public sector, the domestic debt we have on the part of public sector is enormous. They've been issuing bonds, and the people have been subscribing to those bonds. So sometimes the concern you have is that you say to yourself, I will go through, we'll do due process in issuing all these bonds, because we expect that either has been factored into the budget, in which case it means that once the National Assembly has looked over it and certified and approved, then it's been approved. Or you have to now go and make a presentation and then get an approval. So we don't know whether we do that. But I think that if you are going to talk about, you don't have any complaints about the activities of debt management office, if you don't have any complaints, that really has been overactive, both in the domestic and the external market, international market.
That's for public and private sector?
Yes, public and private sector, yes.
So
In fact, the private sector debts, particularly the international debts, at the end of the day, they are public sector debts. Private sector debts, because they implicitly, there's an implicit public sector guarantee. Yeah, so the issue is, and then, so if it goes bad, so how are they going to pay for that, the debt? They're going to pay it from resources within the country. So if I'm a company and say Labour Brothers, I go overseas and I raise some money, and I go to the market and issue some bonds, and I get some money, then that money is going to be paid by the inflows to the Nigerian economy. You're going to get an approval, and then you're going to remit money, and when it's a bond, things are fixed around the bond in terms of how much is going to be paid, when it's going to be paid, and so on and so forth.
So it now looks